Welcome back. We're talking with District Court Judge Brett Loveless. Before we went back for commercial there, we're talking about your background as a prosecutor and all that. Talk about a couple of the cases that stand out to you as a prosecutor.
As a prosecutor?
And the ones that made the media and everything.
Okay.
I know there was one case with, I believe, DePrano.
Yes.
Yes. Let's talk about that one. There's another couple of cases, I think.
Yes.
From my memory, I'll let you take it from there.
Louis DePrano.
Louis
DePrano, in one of those cases, one in a lifetime kind of case, Louis DePrano was a man who had been in trouble in a number of states. He ended up coming to New Mexico, and he got a job at the Albuquerque Family Child Guidance Center, purportedly as a counselor, a psychologist. Mm-hmm. He used phony credentials and lied about who he was, and got a job treating children in a variety of different ways. There were the courts would refer children to get treatment at this center. CYFD, Children, Youth and Family Services, would have children treated there. Albuquerque Public Schools used this center for treatment of children and to assess whether children were suicidal, what have you. So essentially what he was doing was he was working there. They thought he was a counselor. They thought he was legitimate. He wasn't, obviously, but he was molesting children behind closed doors. And quite an interesting way in which it came to light, he had actually been pending charges for criminal sexual contact of a minor in Sandoval County up in Rio Rancho. Mm-hmm. And the prosecutor and the police up there started to figure out that something wasn't quite right. They started an investigation which led them, along with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, mm-hmm. to contact the center, trying to look for Louis DePrano. And what followed thereafter is it's something that you couldn't have imagined what was going on and the kinds of things that were happening. It's one of those things that you wouldn't believe it unless you were actually hearing people talk about it, because it was just so incredibly outlandish. He
was posing as a psychologist, correct?
Yes.
Wasn't he? So how did he actually manage all these credentials? I mean, going through the background and all that, you kind of wonder whether our system is efficiently protecting us in that way as far as the background and all that. It baffles people that he was able to go through to that extent.
Well, he was a con man. There's no doubt about it. He had actually been prosecuted in Colorado, New York, Vermont, a number of different states, but he had never really done much time because he was so effective and adept at dealing with the court system. So essentially what he was doing is he had diplomas that were not real, and one of which was from Harvard University as a physician's assistant. He had one from what they thought was UCLA, but it actually, if you looked closely, was CULA, his psychology degree. And
these were all phony documents.
They were all phony documents. He would present himself very well. He actually came up with, the story that he used to get this job was that he was a psychologist in the Navy stationed off the coast of Iraq. This was during the Iraq War. And that he was treating soldiers and sailors who were suffering from PTSD and whatnot, when one of his good friends was killed in by a roadside bomb in Iraq. And he emotionally couldn't deal with combat anymore or having to treat people. So he just wanted to come back to the States and get a job, a low-key job, where he could just ply his trade, but at the same time recover from the trauma that he was experiencing. And this was completely cooked up by him. None of it was real. But it was so incredibly believable that they just welcomed him in with open arms. He actually, the way he got caught was that the Children, Youth and Family Services requires that anyone that treats their patients has to submit to a background check, which was not good for him because he has a very sordid background. So what he did was he drafted a letter that was purportedly by the Department of Health indicating that he'd already passed a background check. Mm-hmm. And he gave this letter to the director of the program, and she thought, oh, well, he's already passed a background check. We don't need to have him submit to another one.
You don't have to go further.
But in reality, it was phony.
Was it difficult to prosecute someone when he's specifically dealing with children and things like that?
Yes.
I know sometimes the emotions get in the way and stuff. Yes.
It's very difficult.
That must be pretty difficult as a prosecutor when you're, because then it hits home at that point because you're dealing with an individual targeting children and stuff. So I know that was one of the cases that stood out to me. And then there's another case I think you were talking before when you that stood out to you, I think, right?
Yes.
In your case, what other cases?
There's a number of cases that I've handled that stand out in my mind. More recently, the case involving the child that was found buried in the park at Alvarado Park.
Mm-hmm.
His mother had killed him.
This is very recent, I think. Right?
Very recent, within the last 3 years.
I see. Yeah. Transitioning from that to being a judge, I think it helps you a great deal because you gained so much experience throughout the years with that. So that must be pretty helpful, I think, going.
Absolutely. Taking the bench and the district court bench is a daunting task. I immediately, the moment I was sworn on March 5th, I assumed 1,500 criminal cases that ranged anywhere in severity from shoplifting all the way to first-degree murder, and anything in between, armed robberies, rape cases. And so having a broad base of experience in the kinds of cases that I prosecuted that were both high profile or that had very specific and complicated issues, whether they be with expert witnesses, whether they be with procedural mechanisms about how the case was presented to the grand jury, what would happen as far as sentencing, things of that nature. Having a broad base of experience in dealing with these cases has been instrumental in enabling me to do my job on the bench. I don't see how I would have been able to do it had I not had the experience.
True. Do they give you a choice as far as which division you get to pick, or is it something that you initiate on your own, whether it's criminal or family law?
The position for which you apply is the position that's vacant.
I see.
The position that I applied for was a criminal position left vacant by Judge Neil Candelaria when he retired. And so essentially it stays in the criminal division, although there are times when perhaps a civil judge wants to then handle criminal cases, they will transfer over, and that position then goes to the civil side. But the position for which I applied was a criminal position, and that's what I wanted to do. So fortunately for me, no one tried to take it.
So you applied for it?
Yes.
I didn't realize that. When you mentioned the application, I wasn't sure what you designated. We don't normally I don't think anyone would know what's in the application.
Right.
We're just trying to learn the process and how judges are picked and stuff.
Yes.
And I think it's good for the viewers to realize, while you guys are here.
Right.
They get to learn how the process works and everything. It's fascinating to me because I'm starting to learn firsthand from the judges coming here and the ones I'm talking to and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, is there anything else you think will be beneficial to you as a judge that you bring from your previous experience as a prosecutor, or anything that you think will be beneficial for other judges that are coming in, if you could kind of give them a hint, so to speak?
I think that one thing that has been incredibly invaluable for me in making the transition, apart from the fact that I've handled complicated cases and dealing with those, I've had to think through the issues. I'm not seeing them for the first time as a judge. I actually dealt with them as a lawyer. And so what I've had to do is craft arguments based on that and learn the intricacies of these issues and where there may be pitfalls, where there may be holes or loops, or where the law may be unsettled. And so that has served me well as far as being a judge, because I know essentially where the issues lie. Well, the other thing that I would say that has been incredibly beneficial for me is that people practice law, and their practices can vary. They can have a very tepid practice where they don't go to trial a lot, they aren't involved in the court process a lot, or it can be an incredibly active practice. Mine happened to be an incredibly active practice. And so in that time, the experience that I gained in having to deal with a lot of cases at one individual time, at any given time, was extremely useful for me. Because essentially, as a district court judge, you're juggling things constantly, on a daily basis. And for example, I will have a hearing today, and a week from now, An issue may come up with a case that I handled, or a question may come up from one of my staff members or what have you. I can't remember the case that I handled today because I have so many.
Exactly.
And so it can become a hard thing to do.
Correct, yeah.
And having that experience with dealing with the volume of cases has been helpful because I'm fully aware of how you have to juggle the cases.
When deciding in a specific case, do you always have to refer to other, because there's so many statutes there you're looking at, so do you always refer to other common law? I mean, as far as looking at other cases similar to those, or how do you decide on the is it case by case?
Yes.
Or do you go by exactly what happened in a different case similar to this one?
It depends.
Okay.
One thing that judges do is we first and foremost, the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Mexico are the governing authority, and obviously it doesn't answer every question about things that happened. The statutes, that is, it's laws passed by the legislature, signed by the governor. These are things that we have to apply on a daily basis. There are cases that interpret the specific application of statutes to individual cases that we can tap into, we have to rely upon. Oftentimes the cases are right on point. Sure. They tell us exactly what we need to know and how exactly we need to apply a particular statute. But more often than not, the cases don't tell us exactly what we have to do. So we have to rely not only on the legislative intent that the legislature obviously evinced when they passed the statute, but also cases that have interpreted statutes that are like this, or how this statute's been interpreted in the past. These are things that are very important for us as far as figuring out how do we apply this statute to an individual case. And so it's not always easy because every day I'm surprised that a new question arises on something that you would think that comes up every day. So you would think there would be an answer to this particular problem, but it's something new every day. So you really have to be fully versed on what the case law is as well as what the statutory law is.
How many cases have you gone through since you came in?
I have no idea.
Quite a few?
I would say probably more than 500.
Within the last 6 months?
Within the last 6 months.
Wow. So that's a pretty heavy case.
Perhaps 1,000. It's incredibly dynamic. Every day's a new day.
I believe. So how is it that how do you end up with a case? There's a judge that decides. I think you have a chief judge that decides how many cases are distributed. How does that work?
It's actually a random basis. Cases when they're filed, indictments. That's how people are charged with felony offenses here in Albuquerque. When an indictment is filed, then there's a computer system through the courts that automatically randomly assigns a judge to handle that particular case. Okay. So it's not anyone picking who gets what cases. It's random.
Hold that thought for a second. We're going to come back. We'll be right back, guys.